With the recent announcement of the special housing incentive by the government, we are bringing together a group of key industry experts to discuss how these incentives are driving housing production, the challenges involved, and the long-term impact they may have on both the real estate market and sustainable urban growth in Cyprus. To lead this important conversation, please join me in welcoming our moderator, Dr. Giorgos Kentas, General Director at the Cyprus Investment Hub. Dr. Kentas, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Despina. Good morning, everyone. We are, as you know, on day 2. There are 4 sessions to go. Let me take the opportunity, Despina and Katerina, to thank you so much for this great invitation. And I will ask you to put a round of applause for the organizers. You know, 2nd year, and I've been here 3rd year, and I think they do a great job. Let me put some words about our panel. I will start with Eleni. You can see their names there, by the way. Eleni Symeonidou, which is the General Director of Cyprus Land Development Corporation. Yiannis Misirlis, who chairs Cyprus Property Developers Association. And Marios Georgoudis, who is from the local administration and is the head of Building Permits Department. And Yiannis Misirlis, who is at Exnes Property and Public Affairs Manager. This is a very interesting panel, I believe. Let me try to set the stage before giving the floor to our distinguished speakers. I think that we are in a or we are in a crisis housing situation having to do with 2 elements. Demand is outpacing supply, that's number 1. And number 2, there is rising construction cost driven mainly by a number of factors, global inflation being part of it. So this is an area where we have a number of stakeholders who are involved. We have the citizen, the demanders, we have the government that wants to settle a problem, and we have the suppliers, who are mainly the developers and the land owners. So the government, under the leadership of the current Minister of Interior, Mr. Ioannou, put together some incentives. I counted 6 incentives in order to create a so-called win-win mechanism to address the problem and to avoid this situation to develop into an actual crisis. Let me give the floor first to Eleni to respond to whether that it's a good set of incentives that will be able to address the problem and give sustainable solutions. You have your own.
So, thank you for the question. Actually, we are now talking, in terms of housing, we are now talking about 1 incentive, because the Council of Ministers recently decided to encompass under 1 document all the relevant planning incentives for the production of affordable housing. And we did that because people had to run to different sources in order to get what's out there. So very soon, Monday, Tuesday next week, we will have our bulletin guide on the revised incentives. The idea is simple. What the Minister of the Interior has announced is that developers, people who deal in real estate, can obtain additional building density for their developments, provided that a portion of it is sold directly from the developers to beneficiaries of GUAG. When we say beneficiaries of GUAG, we mean the people that are qualified under our existing criteria to benefit from affordable housing. We have a set of criteria that has to do with income, whether you have another property or not that is suitable for the composition of your family, and so on. So Do we, is that sufficient to solve the housing crisis? That, because we are talking about housing crisis, we believe it is, because it combines all the forces that you can have, all the resources that you can have, and it dedicates it to the problem. The government is giving away building density, which is considered state wealth. The developers are coming in, bringing their own expertise and the speed at which they can proceed. And COAG, which is a semi-governmental organization, is in the middle trying to handle the stream from the developers to the beneficiaries. So yes, we believe it.
Okay, Eleni, thank you. Let me pass over to Yiannis, who of course is founder and chairman of IMPERIO with great experience in the field. What do you make out of this, Yiannis?
Well, the incentives for sure are towards the right direction, because increasing the supply is definitely what we need. It's the major component for solving this housing crisis. We've been talking about undersupply in this market for almost a decade now. But finally we managed, the authorities managed to put together a document that makes sense. It's a hybrid document. We have to get the feedback from the market as we move along and probably change the programs as we go along. And it's in the right direction for two main reasons. First of all, as Eleni said, the projects begin to create supply of affordable housing that goes directly to people with certain criteria that COAG, this semi-governmental organization, is handling. At the same time, by making the projects more attractive to the investors or the developers, whoever is behind the project, you increase supply. And to my eyes, that's the most important part of these incentives, because the problem in housing will be solved not only by creating affordable housing, that's a small portion of the buyers in this market, but by increasing the mass market of properties on the market. That's the most important component. And then, on the other hand, we have what you mentioned at your introduction, the challenges we are facing by rising costs. We have supply chain issues, and everything became much worse after COVID, and we're still feeling that. The wars, especially the conflict Ukraine and Russia, didn't help. And now we're facing a very big challenge in Cyprus that we are liaising with the Minister of Labor to try to handle, which is shortage of labor. I can see that if things move the way they're moving right now, at some point we might have enough permits for enough projects to solve the housing crisis, but we might not have enough people to build these projects. So the crisis will persist. It's a major issue, and the authorities need to understand how important it is, because at some points we get the feeling that the market has reached its maximum capacity, output capacity. We have permits and we cannot build fast enough.
Okay, thank you, Yiannis. You know, you're delving into stakeholder analysis, which Eleni also tried to develop. Let me go to Giorgos now. And you know, the idea of this incentive, of this win-win mechanism, is to help middle, low-income people, right? Young people, families. Do you think that this will be affordable from your end, from where you come from?
Well, I would say that, first of all, I totally agree with Yiannis that the certain incentives provided by the government are towards the right direction. It's something that has been discussed for many years. There have been many improvements the past 3-4 years, with the last being last January, Eleni, if I'm not mistaken.
No, there was one last
yep. The thing is that from our point of view, the matter at the end of the day is not providing some affordable units in the market, but making the market affordable. And in order to make the market affordable, we need to boost the supply. So the schemes are towards the right direction, but as Yiannis mentioned, it's a hybrid model. We need to work on it and make some improvements. We have been investing in land the past 3-4 years, and we are going to make a lot of build-to-rent projects. Our goal is to boost the market with a couple of thousand of units for rental purposes. But when we work our financial models, we understand that the build-to-sell is much more profitable compared to the build-to-rent. So we study the models. Build-to-sell looks to work fine, both schemes of the build-to-sell, but the build-to-rent model still needs a lot of improvement. And the reason for that is very simple. We believe that the government should provide a bit more incentives on that, especially to focus on providing lower VAT rates, which is something that other EU countries do, with the last being Slovakia. On the 1st of January, they provided a lower percentage of VAT applied to build-to-rent projects, 5%. There is an instruction from the EU to give this kind of incentives to face and tackle issues related to social impact, let's say. Therefore, we submitted our proposals to the relevant ministries, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Interior, for their review. We are expecting to receive some feedback. We believe that with a certain incentive, lowering the VAT rate to 5%, we will also manage to have one good scheme along with the rest for the build-to-sell. And many investors, especially investors coming from the IT industry, will invest in projects and boost the supply. I will repeat it again, that we don't believe that providing few units at affordable prices will solve the problem. The problem is bigger, and we need to take some more actions.
So you tell us about a more broader systemic dimension that the government must to take into account your business models and your ability to deliver on that. But before going into a discussion about whether the incentives are good enough, and I'll come back to Eleni, let me go to Marius. You know, one of the main ideas of this program of the government is to be more flexible and linear and to provide the utmost help to developers to move fast. Let me tell that we are dealing now with a new era in the permits dimension, because we have a restructure of the whole mechanism going down to the local administration. You had a unit. So please tell us from your experience, and I will ask them to tell how they feel about your work, but tell me from your end right now, are you really more flexible and more fast than before, or not?
Yes, you're right. There was the reform of the local government back in the 1st of July of 2024, which basically, I will speak about Limassol. There were 8 different building permits authorities in Limassol, and all these merged and they became one. So you only know one building permit authority that you are going to apply for the building permit, and one planning permit authority that you're going to apply for your planning permit. The system, of course, it's more simple in terms of having to deal with 8 different building permit authorities. Now you have to deal with one. So the major concept of unifying and having the same approach, whether you decide to build at Agios Athanasios or Ipsonas or anywhere, you have the same approach, because we had this issue of, if you go to the municipality of Ipsonas, you have one approach. If you go to the municipality of Agios Athanasios, a different approach. Now we are unifying this. But what does the local government mean? It means that we are representing the citizens of this city. We are not representing only the high net worth or the medium to high income citizens. We are representing the whole of them, and all of them, they have a right to have a place to live. Of course, our approach towards such projects under the build to rent, build to sell, which basically we are trying to tackle a social aspect and a social problem for the city of Limassol and Cyprus in general. Of course, I will speak the planning permit for this project. It comes directly from Nicosia. The building permit comes to Limassol to give the permit. As an organization, the Limassol local government organization, we have set a priority for social projects, and we treat this project as social. So we are flexible, and we give the highest priority to give permits to such projects. So if I answer to your question, yes, we are flexible. We encourage the developers that they are using this scheme to come to us, find the way that they should apply in order for their applications to be complete. So we are going to be fast enough to accelerate the development of such projects.
Okay. Yes,
Giorgos,
please.
if I may just give an example to emphasize how important the cutting the red tape and the speed of licensing is. PwC issued a study in the past indicating that they compared two projects of same size, one which issues licenses in 2 or 3 months and one which issues licenses in 2 years. The additional cost on the investor or the developer was about 10%. Of course, that cost is not paid by the developer, is moved on to the buyer. So if we manage in an ideal world in this city to issue licenses in 2 months instead of 10 years, everyone has 10% discount on their prices because the cost will be lower. All business plans will change. Mm-hmm. That's how important this is.
Yes.
We're talking about increase in prices. Yes, if we increase supply, prices will drop. If we cut the red tape, prices will drop further.
But let me go back to Marius. Is there a way that you can work it together with the stakeholders to improve the pace of permits regarding the topic that we are dealing with today?
Yes, of course. As I said before, we encourage the contractors or the developers or anyone who wants to make a development to come prior to us. Our doors are open. We have people, engineers that they receive the authorized engineers of development, and we are trying to guide them to better prepare their applications. We talked about the reform. Since the 1st of July of 2024, one of the major reforms was that the applications now for a development, everything is electronically, it's digital. It's through the platform Podamos. It might not be the best program, the best platform to use Podamos. It has many issues, but since it's the only one we have, we need to support it. So we need to use it. There is a decrease in the delay of issuing application, of issuing permits of 35% since we moved to a digital way of applications. Because this platform, it has a checklist, so there is a decrease in the number of rejected applications because of false papers or missing reports or studies that they go through the system in order to apply adequately for your permit. Of course, what we encourage the developers in order to help them, in order to apply for the permit, we are receiving the permit and we are reviewing it. Sometimes we need to send this application up to 7 different departments. Telecommunications, electricity authority, water development department. It might be an area next to a river, so we need to go to another department. If there is next to Natura, we need to go to the Department of Environment. There are many places that it might be needed to have consultations in order to proceed with the building permit. Our role is to have a complete set of the studies and the consultations to issue fast the permits. What we are saying to the applicants is go yourselves, get the consultations, and up to 2 months, we're going to issue you the permits.
Okay. Thank you, Mario. We go back to, I mean, it's not a secret that those incentives were worked out by the people who are very much concerned, right, Eleni? So, and having some discussions yesterday for preparing for the panel, I heard that you really work out the idea and back and forth with the ministry to come up with this set of incentives. The question to you is, did you examine any alternatives? There are a number of models for reaching that result. So how did you come up with this model, which is closer to a PPP, you know, public-private partnership, instead of looking to other, you know, ways that they do in other European countries?
So it's important to say here that those incentives have been there for ages. So they're not, it's nothing new. The idea was there since 2017, if I remember correctly. The problem was that no one was using those incentives because they made absolutely no financial sense. Because of the prices at which the affordable housing was being asked to be sold at, because of the planning restrictions that were applied to developments if they would to choose to impose the incentive. So if you're going to provide an incentive, it needs to be designed in such a way so as to attract an investor, not to repel them. So whilst
it's not an incentive,
it's not an incentive, yeah, by definition it's not an incentive. So I've not always been working for the government, but I know that it's easier to get people to agree on a model that they have, it's known to them. So that's how we decided as COAG that we will move on the direction of actually improving the incentive that the government was willing to give. Because if you're going to start a new conversation about another incentive, that was going to take another 10 years. And you need to know who you work with. So we helped and we listened to and we studied what was wrong with the existing incentives, and that's how we started improving things. And we will continue to do so because the motto of the new housing policy is those who choose to help the state will help them. And we need to translate this in actual terms. And one of those, what we need to be giving is time. We need to give speed, because that's what actually makes the difference in any development.
Okay, thank you. Yiannis, are they sound enough for you? Do they work?
Well, right now they are incentives, so they are attractive. But I want to comment on 2 points. It's a matter of mentality here, and it's not about you guys, it's about the people who decide. If we compare the way we structured our incentives to the housing policy of London, because London has a similar issue, they need to build another city to satisfy the demand. At the beginning, they gave so high incentives that the local developers were very happy with, and they submitted a big number of applications. And gradually, they were reducing the incentives, so to make sure that the upcoming supply is more or less what they need. In this country, we work the other way around. We give very little incentives, 3 months pass by, no interest. We increase the incentive another 5%, another 6 months, we get 2 applications. Then we increase the incentive another 5%, 1 year, 5 applications, 10 applications. It's the other way around. We don't solve the problem immediately. And if I go back to Υπόδαμος, the system which we digitally submit applications, Mario said it's not the best system, but it's what we have and we have to support it. Well, Yiannis is in technology. I'm sure his company, if they're using one system and it's not the best, but they have to support it, they will be in it the other day and they will create the best system because they want to be market leaders. So if we want to support the biggest industry on this island, because it's real estate is the single biggest industry, 15% to GDP. It's huge. We employ 40,000 people. We need to develop the best systems, the best procedures, fast enough, so together with incentives and one day probably without incentives, we can solve any issues and we can have a normalized market for all layers of the population without crisis.
Okay, Yiannis, talking about technology and from your end, do you think that there are other ways to facilitate that so we can get better results?
Well, I mean, I think this question has been already answered by Marios and Yiannis. I can repeat the same, like we have a system, it's not working very well. It's quite good to do some basic stuff. Obviously, we are in an era where the technology is growing faster than any other industry in the world. I think it's not a rocket science to review what's going wrong with Hippodamos and create a new system that will be able to solve many issues, not only for the people that they handle the system, which is the permitting authorities, but also for the professionals of the industry, the architects, the developers, contractors that they, from time to time, need to work on it. But again, I think this is not the main issue that we need to focus on. I think improving the platform will not solve the problem itself. The problem is to provide, as Yiannis said, to improve the incentives in a way that they will be more attractive for the investors. At this time, from 2017 until today, there were many changes in the schemes. Few of them are working now, few of them are not working. We need to go back, revisit them, review them, and do changes that they will make them more workable, let's say, from the side of the investor. You know, there are plenty of industries that an investor could invest. If, and I'm focusing on build to rent because this is where we are involved. If, for example, the return on investment or the IRR of a residential project for build to rent purposes is lower than just buying a bond today from the government or from a Cyprus banking institution, is more or less the same or slightly higher, then what's the point for an investor to go and invest in an industry which have some fluctuations? Therefore, it's there. We need to work on the incentives, improve them even further, and solve the problem. And the problem is that the market right now is not affordable.
I think, Eleni, you need another round of consultation. This is what come out from the discussion so far. Because I want to give the floor to the audience if there are questions and be punctual on time. Is anyone interested in addressing the panel with a question? There are mics available. Katerina will provide you in a moment. But Marius, until, very, very quick response. Do you see any other infrastructure related from your end that must be pursued before coming there? Because, everything is interrelated. Maybe you need to build in areas which the land is cheaper, but there is no infrastructure for the people to go there and have a house or rent an apartment. So please, the mic here until you get 30 seconds reply.
Basically, what you are saying, it has to do with the urban planning of a city or of a country. Of course, you cannot, because you have an empty space somewhere, you need to start creating there. You need to have this infrastructure. You're completely right. But Our aim is to connect the development areas with empty plots nearby. So in order not to have very big infrastructure cost to build this, because of course the infrastructure cost, it's not the government that is going to pay. It's the people that are going to pay this infrastructure cost. But we encourage the development to be close one to each other. But I will reply to only one moment to Yiannis about Hippodamos. First of all, we need another one conference just for the public procurement and the speech. The development of Hippodamos started in 2017, and it was delivered in 2023, the pilot phase. You can realize that the speed of technology is moving way too fast, and we created something with the criteria of 2017. Of course, in 2025, it's not enough. We need to redesign it, we need to create a new platform, but we are saying that as all the local government organizations, they raise this issue because the people that are using Hippodamos from the side of the applicants, they are experiencing a lot of delays and a lot of problems. They start to make an application, and by the time they finish, the system falls, and they make it again.
Yes.
They spend 2 days to submit a simple application.
Hippodamos came under a lot of fire. We have an embedded pathology in public procurement. I don't know where this will end up, but working closer with the stakeholders, maybe some answer to this. But let me give the floor to the audience, to the lady here. You may tell your name and where you address the question, please.
My name is Anastasia. It's a very interesting discussion for me because I'm part of the people who could use the incentives supplied by the government. The thing is, what I've been hearing is mostly like how the government could improve the incentives, how they could improve the programs, how they improve the structure the government is giving these developers. But I'm not really hearing what the developers are developing themselves as incentives to the people. Like a few years ago, I would say 15, 20 years ago, I would see a lot of developers offering incentives to the public, which was rent to buy or other helps with the payment and the pricing that they offered. So how do developers feel about creating their own incentives and not just basing their developments on what the government is offering them as a financial gain?
They would tell you that they work in very close margins, but let's Yiannis take that question.
But any incentives offered by the developer have to be backed by either programs of the government, or if you're referring to financing, by the financial institutions. Because the developer cannot become a bank. If the banks are willing to finance, then by all means, we work with banks. But as the previous panel said, financing in this market has its own issues. But the most important thing in this market right now is to increase the supply. If you increase the supply, it's very simple. Prices will drop. The asking prices will drop. They will drop to a level where it still makes financial sense for the developer to create these projects. It cannot drop below that, because below that, then nobody will do the projects. So that's why we need two components. We need the Ministry of Interior to improve the incentives so the developers can, and the investors, not only developers, can increase the supply on the market, put more units on the market, and we need the Ministry of Labor to decrease the cost so we can drop quite low. Because if the cost is high, then the margin where we can increase the supply is very low. But
okay.
Let me just refer to
Yiannis, let me take another question because we are running out of time, and we see how this goes. Please, sir, there. Anyone else interested for a question?
Hello.
We have only 3 minutes, and I would like to give the floor to Yiannis because he talked less than everyone else. So please, Yiannis, try to answer this question.
So I'm at the right place in the right time, huh? Because yes. I want to ask Yiannis.
Oh, that's
and only Yiannis.
That's a miracle. Thank you.
So Yiannis, we are representing some investors from Greece. We invest heavily in buy-to-rent, especially in Nicosia. We own and manage more than 50 units in Nicosia, especially 1- and 2-bedroom apartments that we get into the market for rent. So what is your perspective on the buy-to-rent? Because I was here yesterday, I heard your colleagues, you want to build around 1,000 or 2,000 units in the next 10 years, but what are you going to do finally? Are you going to sell them to investors and offer them property management, or you are going to construct them and operate them for rental yourselves as Exnes? Because I heard the challenges, but I did not understand the final conclusion or your vision on that.
Well, obviously, we are investors. We are exploring various options. At the moment, our plan is to develop and set up a separate property management company and operate them. However, we don't know how time will evolve and what will be the needs after 5 or 6 or 10 years. Therefore, the way we are designing our projects, firstly, we aim to boost the supply and lower the rents all over around the city. And the second is that we are designing in a way that at some point later we will be able to exit. It doesn't mean that we will exit from the projects and sell them to one investment fund or another investor or whatever, but we are designing so all the options are there. The thing is that if you are investing on this specific market, I think you have a lot of room to move, let's say. The city, especially Limassol, needs more investors to invest on build-to-rent schemes. There are plenty of projects that you can consider or investing. I would say, I think there are like 100 developers down there. You can visit them and check. But honestly, I cannot give you definite answer whether we are going to invest them and sell them or we are going to build them and operate them. It's something that time will show. At the moment, the plan, so far we have around 200 units which have been delivered to tenants. We are operating them on our own. We have 100 units that they will be delivered by the end of the year. Here again, we will be operating them, and more projects are on the pipeline.
Okay, thank you. Anyway, we have 2 minutes to go. Okay, it's a wrap. So thank you so much, Eleni, Yiannis, Marios, Giorgos. A great panel. We can have them next year as well, Katerina, don't you think? Okay, thank you everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day.